Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the debut album from Kygo called Cloud 9. So let's talk a little bit about tropical house, because in mainstream pop you can't go that far on the radio without hearing its influence. And yet in comparison with most house music, it's relatively new. An offshoot of deep house that has its origins in the mid to late 2000s, it has become huge in the mainstream right now thanks to big pop crossover singles or pop artists like Justin Bieber hopping on the sound. And really it makes sense. The dark hollow tones of deep house could work in the right environment, but didn't have the sort of festival-ready vibe that the lighter, more liquid tropical house tones did. And with the inclusion of a broader and brighter instrumental palette, it's the summer-ready material that might not have the bombast of the EDM of the first few years of the 2010s, but it definitely has more groove behind it, and I can appreciate that. And yet, I would make the argument that, like with so much electronic music, the US charts barely reflect the world-spanning scope of the genre. And one of the biggest cases of that is Kygo, a Norwegian producer who first smashed on the scene with Firestone in 2014, that finally crept onto the bottom of the Hot 100 late last year in 2015. But even though the United States might have forgotten that he exists, the rest of the world has not, with multiple massive singles and as of yet the fastest artist to hit 1 billion streams on Spotify. Obviously there is something to this guy that has grabbed everyone's attention, along with the fact that I've been getting requests for months to cover this album, and his debut record did have an impressive array of vocal talent, including John Legend, Foxes, Tom Abdel, Labrinth, and plenty more. That said, I was a tad skeptical how well the tropical house formula would hold up over the entire record, or if Kygo could keep things interesting just beyond the singles. So I hopped on Cloud 9. What did I find? Well, here's the thing. Outside of you guys requesting this review, and even in comparison to other electronic albums, even electronic dance albums, Cloud 9 by Kygo is a prime example of a record that is functionally critic-proof, especially for me. I'm used to lyrical analysis and assessing themes, or at least deconstructing the dramatic impact of a record, but here, the entire purpose of Cloud 9 seems to be for chilled-out electronic music festivals, where it becomes even less about the music and more about the vibe. As such, there's a couple parts to evaluating a record like this, whether it would work at your standard festival, and whether it not has any replay value outside of that. In this case, well, it's not rising to the blissed out heights that Jamie XX managed to reach with In Color, but I did find a decent amount to enjoy from this album, more than I expected, even if I would hesitate to call it all that great. So let's start off with the instrumentation and production, and the key thing to note is that there's a fair bit to like about Kygo's formula. He's got a taste for strong underlying melodies that do stick in your head, being driven by his piano, and when his mix can build some swell off the gentle ebbing bass, there's real groove to match the more textured percussion. And to his credit, after several listens to the album, I can identify a fair bit of personality in Kygo's compositions. Staccato, bouncy progressions that tend to play off different cadences on the same note before shifting. And yet, the key word with all this is formula. If you're looking at these instrumentals, only the smallest of details can differentiate some of these songs at second glance. Most of the time, it's for the better, the gleaming sleigh bells, the layered percussion groove of Firestone, the occasional touches of strings that show up on Oasis or For What It's Worth, and the thicker guitar beneath Fragile that still knows when to drop out and give Labyrinth's multi-track vocals a lot of room for the bridge. But on the topic of guitars, there are definitely points where Kygo hasn't quite nailed the blend. Considering his ultra clean, reverb touch production doesn't always balance well against the rougher tones on Fiction or in the vocals or guitar, or on Raging, where the acoustic groove is good, but it feels swamped out by the oscillating, bassy synth that seems to overtake the melody. For me, I think the larger issue is that for as good as some of these melodies are, once they get to a good chorus, they don't really progress or expand beyond it. Even in terms of thicker layers to add more bombast. Only once this really materializes on Carry Me, which takes Julia Michaels' earnest and multi-track delivery, and then for the final chorus brings in a much thicker piano tone and drums to really hit a potent climax. In my opinion, easily the best song on the album. I really liked it. And sure, you could argue that more of these songs, they aren't trying to reach those big climax points. That deep house and tropical house is a more relaxed genre, but I'm not always sure that the lyrics can support that. Firestone talks about lighting up the world, even despite Connor Sewell not really convincing me with raw power. Raging speaks in metaphors of fire, quite ironic actually, given how chilly that song feels, even despite Kodaline's rougher vocals. Most of these tracks are dealing in relationship drama that could earn the bombast, but it doesn't really materialize. Now in some cases you already don't want that. I'm in Love is already a pissy enough song, not helped by James McMorrow's wannabe James Blake vocals about catching your girl lying and then wanting her to crawl back. It's sanctimonious as hell, really unattractive song, not helped by the Lana Del Rey sample. And sometimes lyrical metaphors are a little bit too on the nose for their their own good, like the glass metaphors on Fragile that are literally punctuated by sounds of glass breaking in the mix. Or take Oasis, a Sia-written song that frankly should have been sung by Sia if only because she sounds best over her own material. I appreciate Fox's trying, and she sounds fine here, especially against that production with the piano and strings, but her own writing can have more nuance than what Sia normally gives here. It's an Oasis as a metaphor for love. We've kind of seen this stuff done before. And then we get the lyrical moments that are just kind of weird, like the anti-materialistic Sirius that, in addition to feeling kind of awkwardly structured, has Matt Corby delivering a scat breakdown on the bridge as if we want to hear that in electronic music. Or take Stay, a song where it is emphasized very early that Maddie Noise is capable of leaving this relationship and yet chooses to stay, which could be romantic, even when the guy then cheats on her and then pushes her away. That's well past the point of plausibility here. You could just leave. If anything, the more lightweight tone tend to work a little bit better with simpler subject matter, like on Not Alone with RHODES' soulful tones, or John Legend making a tribute song to his baby daughter on Happy Birthday. That really is kind of adorable. Ultimately, if we're looking for some of the most complex emotional dynamics on this album, I'd probably look to Stole the Show, an actually pretty good song, where Parson James acknowledges the relationship has kind of run its course, but they sure did have a blast together and they made something special that they'll remember. It's a great sentiment, well realized. I definitely like that song a fair bit. But overall, look, there's a limit to what I can really say about this album, partially because it all starts to blur together into a vaguely pleasant, twinkling blob, complete with pianos and gentle waves of bass. Cloud 9 by Kygo is probably an appropriate title for that album, because on some level, it really is so insubstantial. But there were enough bright moments that stuck out that I'm inclined to be on the side of liking this. I doubt I'm ever going to feel passionately about this sort of, like, tropical house, but on some level, I doubt that would feel the point anyways. Regardless, for me, this is a very light 6 out of 10, but a recommendation if you're looking for some casual, inoffensive beach music that's more melodic and catchy than it has any right to be. And there is a place for that kind of music. I can appreciate that, and this is done reasonably well. Otherwise, you might only remember snippets, but I can see them being good ones. So check this out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. What did you guys think about this album? I got the poll up there, so if you guys had a more nuanced criticism, or if I missed something, or if you guys just thought this was completely formless and interchangeable, let me know in your comments here. I'm actually curious to see how well this album actually resonates with people. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming up that you want me to take a look at, I would be glad to give them a listen. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.